Recently, I've been invited to give a presentation to a professional audience, and it was a big deal for me as it opens up my career to opportunities in public speaking, as well as giving me a chance to talk to a wider audience. You may think this would be easy for me. After all, I've made over 200 videos for my YouTube channel, but the truth is, I had a good reason to be nervous. Whilst I've made all of those videos, the benefit of presenting in this way is I get to edit out all the mistakes so you don't see them, unless I want you to. I don't have that option when presenting live, and during the last time I did a live stream, I discovered that I can be susceptible to nerves. I later discovered that I have a condition called muscle tension dysphonia, which causes my voice to fatigue quickly, but it's also likely to be triggered by stress. The voice weakens, engaging the muscles surrounding the larynx to assist, but creating a sensation similar to being choked. It causes coughing, which weakens the voice even more as the vocal cords are scraped against each other, creating a terrible downward spiral. And that experience was the last time, as of today, that I live streamed. And now I was being asked to give a presentation that would run for 1 to 2 hours to a professional audience of strangers. I was starting from less than square one. No topic to present, no plan, and an unreliable voice. A lot to be nervous about, but a huge opportunity, and I had to give it my best shot. Delivering a useful, compelling presentation can be the key to establishing yourself as credible, or even as an authority in your area of interest. The approach was made to me by a US chapter of the Project Management Institute, PMI, which matched perfectly with my interest area, my career and my background. We agreed to do a remote presentation in 2 months' time, which will give me an opportunity to find a subject to talk about and create something for that specific audience. Understanding the audience is a vital first step to crafting a useful presentation. Fortunately, it was fairly simple to understand this audience. PMI members, they are professionals, they have an interest in project management, so much so that they pay a membership fee and spend their spare time learning about the topic. I suspected that some newcomers to the profession may be present, but that the mix would also include some highly or moderately experienced attendees. This created a dilemma for me. What could I talk to them all about that they would all benefit from? You see, if you watch my channel regularly, you'll have often heard me explain that I'm not an expert, I'm not a guru, I'm just on the same journey as you, and I happen to enjoy sharing my experiences and skills. And by the way, if that appeals to you, then consider subscribing. What this meant was that I didn't have one big topic to talk about. I've not spent years researching one niche topic or come up with some profound new insight into my industry. All I knew was that on a one-to-one basis, I could probably help everyone in that audience with some tip or tutorial specific to them and their individual needs. But what could I talk to a mixed audience about that would benefit everyone equally? And if you're ever in this situation, you need to think about this too. Try to consider the needs of the audience and what will give value to them. What they're really interested in hearing about is way more important than whatever you want to talk about. And if you don't consider that, you'll lose their interest very quickly. Then it occurred to me, the thing that makes me different is that I'm a project management YouTuber. And there are lessons that I've been learning from being a YouTuber that overlaps and enhances my project management approach. From an educational standpoint, it works. I've learned new things unexpectedly that can help project managers. It also provokes curiosity. YouTube's a very famous brand, and the subculture of content creators can be a little mysterious to those who haven't created videos before. I'd found a sweet spot of a topic that was related to both of my passions, was unique and potentially interesting. Deliver Your Project like a YouTuber would share the lessons I've learned on goal setting, communication, performance management that I've developed or enhanced by being a creator. Skills that could be transferred to people working in project management or probably any other profession. So now I had a topic. Now it was time to work on that wonky voice. When I received the diagnosis of muscle tension dysphonia, I was referred to a voice coach. Unfortunately, my health insurance declined the opportunity to fund my learning my do-re-mi's. To go through the free referrals through the NHS, That would have meant taking one of the limited spaces that's available for people with severe voice and speech disorders, and to be honest, I just couldn't in good conscience do that. So I did the next best thing. I looked for an answer on YouTube. I found a number of voice coaches and therapists that gave advice about reducing the tension with massage and tips for what to drink and preparation steps. Whilst I didn't find a cure, I did find these tips helpful for managing the situation on a day-to-day basis. So if ever you see me talking live and I start shifting my voice box around and looking like I'm throttling myself, now you know what I'm doing. As I started making preparations, I received a second request to do a presentation, this time from a forum of project managers working in the NHS in Scotland. This was a shorter duration, a maximum of 1 hour, including time for questions and answers. I felt that would be a reasonable amount of time to talk, about 30 to 40 minutes, and then see how I held up during the Q&A. This event would take place about a month before the PMI event, which meant I needed to hurry up and actually turn my topic idea into actual content. I prepared my presentation content in a very passive way to begin with. Every time I thought of something that may be relevant to the speech, whether I was at home, in the office, or traveling, I just noted it down. After 2 weeks, I had about 40 specific tips or observations to share. In my mind, I thought, if I give each of these items 2 to 3 minutes, then I'll easily fill the time allocated. And that's a big mistake. For a YouTube audience where you can hit the pause or return to the video later, it's not so bad to be bombarded with multiple tips and thoughts. But for a live audience, it could become overwhelming. I realised, fortunately in time, that all I'd created was a list, not a speech or a presentation. This threw my preparations into doubt, and I suddenly started questioning if I had anything of value to share. Luckily, I'd taken the opportunity to look more into the skills behind public speaking, and I decided to revisit a book I'd bought years ago but never got round to reading, TED Talks by Chris Anderson. Whilst there was a lot that I learned from this book, such as building a connection with the audience and preparations and so on, my preparations were rescued by his advice on identifying a through line for the presentation. The through line is the point of the speech, the connecting theme that binds all of the elements together. When I learned what a through line was, I then spent 2 days trying to figure out what mine was. But when I realized what it was, I was amazed that I'd stumbled onto something much bigger than the intended topic. You see, my presentation wasn't a bunch of tips anymore. It wasn't about project management. It wasn't even about YouTube. I realized that my through line was that we can find professionalism in unexpected places, and that when we do, we should learn from it and apply whatever we can. Understanding the through line meant that I could trim about 50% of the content and make the remaining content more relevant, more focused, and able to drive towards that single point. After a weekend of monastic, deep focused dedication, I finally had my presentation ready for the NHS Project Managers Forum. Please understand, this presentation was not a practice run or a dress rehearsal. It was important to me that this landed well for that audience, but they were the first audience to receive this presentation, and whilst I received positive feedback, I knew there were elements that had to be improved. For one thing, the pacing was off, way off. I'd nearly filled the whole hour, rushing the end and not giving enough time for questions and answers. Also, there were parts that I felt had gone too deep into the areas of YouTube that just weren't so interesting to the audience. But the positive was that I delivered the speech without nerves and that my voice box hadn't tried to strangle me. I had a few weeks left to refine the presentation and took every opportunity to talk for extended periods, which must have been delightful for everyone else around me. There was a big difference in presenting things at work to what was coming. I've shared tips and tutorials and done presentations at work. It felt like the stakes with the PMI speech would be so much greater. I didn't do any full duration rehearsals as I just didn't want to tax my voice too much. Instead, I employed visualizations to imagine how I'd talk to each section in the presentation. By the way, doing this as you're preparing to go to sleep is a terrible idea. I gave myself a lot of sleepless nights, not because of anxiety, but from being overly preoccupied by one section of the presentation. It may have helped the presentation a little, but visualizing whilst intending to stay awake was more productive. Eventually, the big day arrived. As the PMI chapter was based in Pennsylvania and I'm in the UK, that meant I had to wait until about 11 PM to deliver the speech. So I took a power nap at 9 PM for about half an hour with multiple alarms set around the room. Then I mixed a giant cup of tea with some lemon and honey, poured a large glass of water, set up my screen and waited to begin. I set up the screen so that my notes were appearing underneath the webcam so I could look at them whilst not breaking too much eye contact with the audience. I also kept the slides that I shared to a minimum. That's not so much of a presentation skill, it's more of a YouTube skill. Just trying to maintain that kind of connection with the audience through eye contact, but also understanding the audience can be distracted if they have to contend with reading and listening at the same time. The presentation went well. I talked non-stop for about 90 minutes, and during that time there were about 2 moments where I noticed my voice had fatigued, and I had to pause to drink some tea, rub my throat, and just to unlock the tension a little. But I don't think it was significant enough to be noticed by the audience. My unfamiliarity with Zoom was exposed at one point though. I'd prepared with it, so I understood how to do screen sharing and how the functions would work. But I got a little bit confused when I saw images of hands appearing all over the screen at one point, and I asked if they were raising a hand to ask a question, and it turned out no, they were just applauding me. And in that moment of total relief, I nearly lost track of the whole presentation and of myself. But I was fine. I received positive feedback from the organizer and members of the audience, and hopefully shared something of interest and value. Afterwards, I was relieved and now able to put public speaker on my LinkedIn profile. It gave me back my confidence to talk to large groups about something that interests all members of the audience, and it helped me to understand that my voice can be managed and possibly improved. It's been incredibly encouraging to know that PMI and NHS were interested in hearing what I had to say, and means I have greater confidence in myself now than I did before. So much so that when faced with difficulties that would otherwise challenge my self-belief, I can look back on these moments and gain some strength and comfort from them. But I thought, that's great. I'm glad I've done this. But now I'm going to take a break from public speaking and just refocus on the other aspects of my life, my family, my career, the YouTube channel. And right then I was approached with an offer to deliver my presentation to another project management professional audience. This time in person. I'll have to make another video to let you know how that goes afterwards. One thing I should probably mention, I didn't get paid for any of those presentations. That's not to say that my whole career is a sequence of freebies. In fact, when I put my mind to it, sometimes people actually pay me for my efforts. And this video here tells you how much I got paid when working as a project manager, a PMO, a contractor, a perm. So go on, I know you're curious.